guys, on this episode of Dan's Garage, we'll be replacing this, with this. Let's see how it's done. Hey Dan, run that intro!
Hey gearheads, what's up? Today on Dan's Garage, we're going to be taking the drive shaft out of this thing. We're going to go ahead and find out what kind of bearing, the center bushing support thingy it needs, and we're going to go ahead and replace that and put it back in. Alright guys, so we're at the back yoke here, the back end of the drive shaft at the rear end. So most of us should have these straps. Some people will have bolts with little flat pieces, but first thing I always like to do is just kind of hit everything with some lubricant, especially if this stuff has not been apart recently or ever. And if you have the truck in neutral, you'll be able to rotate this around and you can get done what you need to. But of course, if you don't, then you can't move it, which I can't. Now there's two ways to do this. Depending on how tight these are, you will need a little bit of tension on it to loosen them. So it's best to loosen them and then go ahead and put it in neutral and you can rotate it around, or you can use a pry bar or something to lock it from moving and just pull all these off, pull the straps off. Once you can get it started in here, you can kind of wiggle it back and forth. Try not to do any damage to the needle bearing cover sucker here, if that's the name of it. I don't know. Alright, so that's coming out. There we go. Smaller in here to wiggle it out. Got room in there. That's a little bigger. There we go. And it's out. Okay. You want to mark where the yoke was in reference to the rear end. Just put a scribe line or a marker line or something so you know how it came off. That way it'll go back on the right way, and if you didn't have any vibrations before, then you won't have any now. So you can see all the play this thing has. That is going to give us crazy vibrations at highway speed. This truck hasn't seen a highway in many, many years, so just a good preventative measure. If you've never done this on your truck and your truck's not restored, you may want to check it out. Here we are under the truck in the center, and this is the sucker we're going to remove. So it's just two bolts on top of here, and we should be good in the middle. So we'll pull it down, get it on the bench. Alright, so that sucker is free. I know it's kind of dark here, but I'm under the truck, so I'm gonna back this up out of the transmission. And since I have the truck on an angle, I shouldn't have too much fluid leaking out. There's that bearing. Can't get in here too well. Perfect. Now, you do have to fish it through this hole, so just want to be careful getting the sucker out. Alright guys, so we got the drive shaft out. So now you can see how I taped the U-joint down here so it doesn't separate. The bearing is here, so we're going to be replacing this. You also want to mark the relationship of these two here, so your drive shafts stay in the same configuration when you put everything back together. And then you also want to protect the yoke that goes into your transmission and the back of your transmission if it's leaking, to protect all that. So we're going to go ahead and start working on taking this apart. Alright guys, so we got the two-piece drive shaft out here on the bench. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark them so I know how to put them back together. It is very important that you keep them in the same configuration, or you could have vibration issues, balance issues, things like that. You can see how dirty this is, so I'm going to have to remove this universal joint so I can get to the nut inside there, or the bolt, so I can pull this yoke off, and then we'll go ahead and press this off, get a new one and press it on, and then put everything back together. So we'll start by cleaning it up. So first thing we're going to do is free up this clip. Alright, you definitely do want to save these clips because you may or may not get good replacement ones when you get the replacement U-joints, or if you do, they may be a couple different sizes, so you want to check your thicknesses and make sure that you're putting the right ones back on. So save these. And then you want a socket that'll fit inside there, and one that will fit on the outside of the opposite side. So we're actually going to flip this over now that that one's off. And we'll go ahead and break this one free and take it out. Put this at the bottom. Now you can do this in a press if you have a press, but kind of hard to get a big two-piece drive shaft in a press, so we're going to use the hammer method. Alright, looks like we're getting somewhere. Okay. Now, once you're at this point, you can try and see if you can get it off without the caps coming off. If it'll angle enough to get it out, sometimes you can. If not, what we're going to do is we'll try to pull the one cap off and get it off and then pull it out the other way. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and leave this one up here. And we're going to go ahead and tape this. Keep these on, because you don't want these coming off. Now, if your universal joints are not as tight and in good shape like these are, then you probably want to replace these. But if they're in good shape and you're able to get the cap off and back on and nothing got in there, then you can go ahead and reuse these. I got the chalk mark to show where it goes in line with the other one, because you can see this does have a weight. This was balanced, so we want to make sure we put it back the right way. I may sand it down a little bit and clean it up, but I may not. Alright, you see I got my chalk line here, so I'm just going to draw a chalk line here so I make sure that goes in the right way. These are splined a certain way, the ones in the center, so this can only go on one way, but let's just be sure we're covering the bases. And this should come off pretty easily, I think. I hope. Yep. Comes right out. So you can see on the bottom there's a spline missing, so that way this will only go on one way, but it doesn't hurt to mark it anyway. Now, to get this off, I'm sure it's not just going to pull out, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try... Here's what I'm going to do. I just have the yoke in the vise, letting the drive shaft hang down. And what I'm going to do is just put a socket in here and hit it with the hammer. I'm thinking it should come out pretty easily. I'd love to press this, but my press isn't this tall and I'd have to bring it out and put wood under it and a whole bunch of stuff. So let me see if I can at least get this off this way, and then I'll hopefully get the bearing off the same way and maybe get the other one on. So let's see. There we go. So here's what we got. So this came off. And this, so this rubber is still kind of attached, I guess, at the center there. So I think what I'm going to do is the same thing and put this in the vise and hammer on it. So it came out enough to slip off. You can see that piece. Assistance here. There it is. This does look pretty good here. Looks like it bottoms out, so I don't have to worry about how far in the next one's going. And the splines do look very good. So we're going to clean this up. Looks like this one's a little twisted on the end, but we'll be okay. So we do have these cups. I'm not sure if they come with the new bearing. There was one on that side and this one over here for this side. So I am going to keep track of inside and outside, in case they don't come with the new bearing. The new bearing should be like this, so I'm going to see if we can get one of these and see where we're at. So the funny thing is, this bearing is still in great shape. Rotates freely, it's perfect, it's just the rubber. I guess after a bunch of years, this is not really any good. Alright guys, so I got the new bearing. It's a precision carrier bearing. Got this from a auto parts store. And of course, first thing I always like to do is check it, make sure that everything looks the same. The bolt area looks the same, platform looks the same. I'm going to stand them up, and well, this has the bolts on it, but I'm going to look at it visually. The bearing is the same size on the inside there. Looks the same on the outside, every other component, so I think we'll be good to go. So we're going to go ahead and press this on and move forward. Alright, these are really dirty, so I'm going to go ahead and clean these up, and we'll be right back. And there we go, nice and clean. These are very important, let me show you why. Alright, so you have your bearing here, and you can see the inner race here. These will actually sandwich in between that inner race. So when these are all together, when you have the yoke on here with the bolt and then the drive shaft on the other side, this basically sandwiches all this stuff in the middle here, so this is free to rotate, so your drive shaft is going to be free to turn. So all this is very important. Don't go throwing those away and going, I don't need that stuff, and just go throwing this in here with the drive shaft. You may have issues with it rubbing because it's going to be against the wrong parts here. So let's go ahead and get the drive shaft and put this on. Here's your yoke. You want to make sure you clean inside here, and especially these grooves in here where the lock pins go. Make sure these two are clean, so that way it'll go on easier. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get this together. So I'm going to put the inner thingy there, and then I'm going to spray a little lubricant on here, because that should help it. And then what you want to find is a socket that'll fit over this, that'll go onto the race, because you want to be pushing on the race. So we're going to go ahead and get that up like that. Get that up like that. Look at that, it pressed right in. I didn't even have to push it. That worked out nice. Put this on the right way, I guess. Put this on here. And remember, there's a double keyway on the bottom here. I also have my chalk on the top. So that's going to go on here. Now, let me lubricate this a little bit. This a little bit. This doesn't seem like it's going to go on as easy. This around so I can kind of sit it up against my vise. That way I have something to push up against. Alright, I'd say that's pretty good for a bearing. I'm no expert, but I do have my own garage, so. Alright, these are not loose. This is a little loose this way, but it's not left to right. And then I think once we go ahead and lock this bolt in, then I think we'll be in good shape. This has a little bit of an angle to it, so I'm assuming it didn't sit all the way down, so that should be good enough for where it was. I'm going to go ahead and put this bolt back on, and then we'll be good to put the two drive shaft halves together. Alright, so this should go together pretty easily. Now, you definitely want to hold these cups and make sure they're not going to fall off unless you're replacing your U-joint, which if it's loose at all or has any play, you may want to. Since this thing really hasn't moved in a long time, the U-joints are actually really good. They are greasable as well, so I will definitely do that before I put this whole thing together. So Putting them back together is just basically taking the one cap off very gently, making sure you don't disturb the needle bearings. Make sure to get no garbage in here also. Make sure not to get any garbage in here also. And just basically stick this one up through here. I'm going to use a C-clamp to press it in. If you have a vise or a press, that would work just fine. But both drive shafts are pretty long, so it's kind of cumbersome, to say the least, to get this into a press or something. But you can hammer it in, or I should be able to just press it in with this, and I'll get it over enough so the other side is able to go in. Step 3, now that these are flush, is getting it in just deep enough so the pin will go in the groove. So I've moved to the floor just because it'll be easier to bang this against cement than it is to hit it against wood. And it is better to do this with a small hammer and keep checking it, because once that groove reveals itself, you just want to go to the bottom of it, because you don't want to preload this too much. You want to make it exact. And you just want to make sure this is seated all the way around. So the key to knowing when these are seated, you could see that it's in all the way around the same amount. Alright. Now flip it over and do the same thing. This just shows you the benefit of cleaning threads. Look at those threads. It's going to make a huge difference when I go to put this back together. Alright, so here's step 1 of putting the drive shaft back in. It is real long, so I'm using my foot on the back end, my leg on the middle end, and my arm up here. And step 1 is getting it through this hole and getting it towards the transmission. I am leaving the wrap on the front that goes into the transmission until I get it up there, just so I know it's going to stay clean. There it goes. Again, when you're pulling off this tape, make sure these caps stay on, and if you taped which way it went into the rear end, put it back the same way, just so you know you're not going to have any balance issues. Or hopefully you won't have any balance issues. There we go. The trick to getting these in, sometimes you just got to move it around. Sometimes you can actually jack the rear end up or let it down, and it'll give you a little bit more room to get it in to where it needs to be. Alright, tighten those up and that's it. Alright, so that's it. Drive shaft is in, looking good. Bearing should be good for many years. Alright, don't forget to put your vehicle back in park before you lower it off the jack stands, or you will find out the hard way. So hopefully you're watching this before you've done that. I haven't jacked this down yet, so I have not forgotten. But put it up in park, that way when you lower it down, you're good to go. If you haven't done anything else major, you should be good to get back on the road. I do still have a little bit more work before this sucker's going to hit the road, so I'm going to keep working.
Well, that's it for this episode. You can leave comments below, give this video a thumbs up, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell so you get notifications when new videos are uploaded.
Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay positive, keep on wrenching. And
wait, what's my line?
this week on Dan's Garage, he's going to replace this with this. Gum.
No.
Are you chewing gum again?
No.
What is with you and chewing gum? No wonder you're sick all the time.
I'm getting braces soon.
All right.
This is my last chance.
And action. Go ahead and take a look at what kind of bushing, bearing, center, support thingy we need. Is that the technical term? Probably not. The neighbors always have to mow your lawn when you're shooting a YouTube video. That's probably not going to be able to get anything. Can't shoot everything. First thing I'm going to do, I got my chalk line here, so I'm just going to break the chalk. Here's what I'm going to try doing. Pay no mind to the beer. Alright, halfway point. Time for a break. Darn mosquito. Mosquitoes are getting me. Shifter line in. And not down the camera. Sorry. Road. I do still have a little bit more work before this sucker's going to hit the road, so I'm going to keep working. Beep beep.